We're looking at life beyond lockdown as we go through the book of Exodus. And this week we've got to Exodus chapter 4. We're going to do that in a different way, but the Bible reading is from Luke chapter 9 and verse 28. Whilst we're thinking about the story of Moses, here's a little story of Moses that we don't often think about. It's known for many as the transfiguration of Jesus. But when Jesus took his friends up a mountain, they got a little bit of a surprise as to who would be there. So Luke chapter 9, verse 28. About 8 days after Jesus had said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him up into a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice from the cloud saying, "This is my son whom I've chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and told no one at that time what they had seen. God's word. It's said that in order to understand someone, you should walk a mile in their moccasins or walk a mile in their shoes. Well, I'm inviting you to walk a mile in my shoes today. I hope it will give you something of an insight into me. My name is Moses. If life is made of turning points, I'd already had my share before I met the I Am. I was brought up as a prince of Egypt, but with a Hebrew heritage. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was out to slaughter all Hebrew baby boys. And my mother, in an attempt to save me, put me in a basket and floated me into the bulrushes of the River Nile. Pharaoh's daughter found me. She adopted me. And amazingly, through the brave wisdom of my sister, employed my birth mother, Jochebed, to raise me. I was brought up as a prince of Egypt, but with a Hebrew heritage. I knew the ways of the palace of Pharaoh, but I knew also that my own people were being enslaved, being slaughtered. Then there came a day I could stand it no longer. I was out watching my people in their hard labor, and I saw a slave master beating one of my own. Something in me burst. Anger at injustice, fury at him beating a helpless slave, deep disgust at the persistent slaughter of my own people, and even a sense of guilt as a survivor of the male infanticide, the murder of male babies that my people were experiencing. I looked to see if it was clear. And then I struck the slave master dead, hid his body in the sand. I didn't realize then but I'd been seen. The following day, I stepped in to break a fight up between two Hebrews. Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you going to kill me like you did that Egyptian yesterday? Those words stung. My naivety in my actions a day before, my presumption that I could step in to rescue my people, defend their cause, my arrogance that as a prince of Egypt I had the power to do something. And above all, my fear that I was found out and there would be a price to pay. Pharaoh wanted me dead, but I fled, a fugitive with a death sentence on his head. I hid in the desert, but there I found a wife, had a family. 40 years at the back of the desert, 40 years to rue and regret my failings, 40 years humbled from being a prince to a lowly shepherd, feeling that sheep were the only things I was fit to lead. 40 years as a nobody. Then the call. That day at the burning bush turned my life upside down. For 40 years I'd been a shepherd looking after sheep in the wilderness, sometimes near my tent, my wife, my sons, other times traveling many, many miles foraging for food and caring for my flock. And the day I saw the bush which didn't burn, that day I came into holy ground. That day in the presence of the I am changed me forever. Yahweh, Jehovah, the I am who I am, called me from the never-burning bush. He called me to set his people free from slavery in Egypt and bring them into their promised land. You know, hundreds of years before, the I am had promised our forefathers, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, that he would give us the land of Canaan as our inheritance. And he sealed his promise with a binding covenant. And now he was going to keep his word. You'd have thought that seeing the never-burning bush would have been enough to convince me. But my heart said, no, I won't go. My head spoke to the failures of my past and said, no, I can't go. And my silly, stammering lips said, I couldn't even speak if I did go. Here I was, stood before the immense majesty of holy power, before the never-burning bush, and I refused that power. I said, no, they won't believe me, they won't listen, and they'll doubt that you appeared to me. And he, that is Yahweh, had just declared himself to be I am, or I will be who I will be. And when I look back and think about it, it was almost like he was saying, you want to know who I am? You stand back and watch who I am. Stand back and watch me demonstrate my power. Stand back and watch me reveal my justice. Stand back and watch me show my love to my people. Then you'll know who I am. And I dared say, no. Well, then he asked me what was in my hand. It was my shepherd's staff. He told me to throw it on the ground, and I did. Immediately it became a snake, and I leapt back, frightened of snakes. And then he told me to reach out and pick it up by the tail. So gingerly, I picked it up by the tail, and it became a staff again. Put your hand in your cloak, he said. I put my hand in and took it out, and it was white as leprous like snow. And then he said, put your hand back in your cloak and take it out. And I took it out, and it was healed again. This is all too much. A never-burning bush, a staff that became a snake, which became a staff again, a hand which became leprous and then became healed again. And then he told me that if these signs weren't enough, then I could pour water from the river Nile, and that water would become blood. It was like he was saying, you want to know who I am? I am powerful. Don't refuse my power. But I dared. I refused his power. And then he rebuked me. All this, and I suddenly found myself blurting out, I can't speak, I'm not eloquent, and I'm slow of speech and tongue. Then he spoke, definitely with an edge on his voice, and it scorched from the bush. Who gave you a mouth, he said. Who makes a man deaf or mute or sighted or blind? It's me, now go. I will help you, I will teach you, and you will know what to say. He said, go. I still said, no. No, don't send me, send someone else. Now there was more than an edge to his voice. Looking back, I don't know how I dared say no to the great I am, but I did. His anger burned against me. Talk about feeling the heat from a never-burning bush. You should feel the heat of his anger. I trembled as he spoke, but he had an answer for my reluctance and my refusal. Your brother Aaron is on the way. He will speak. You will act. You will be like God. He will be your mouthpiece. He will speak. You will act in my power. And that was almost it. I had to go. I could no longer say no. My refusal, my lack of faith, my doubts, all defeated by his insistence that I was his man to set his people free. I trudged back home to pack, said goodbye to my father-in-law, and put my family on a donkey. Yahweh, I am, had broken down my heart. But he made it clear that Pharaoh, king of Egypt, would not allow the same. He would harden his heart again and refuse to release my people, his slave nation. So many of Israel's sons had died at the hand of Pharaoh as babies. And now God's judgment was against him. On the way, I fell seriously ill to the point of death. It seemed God would take my life even before I got back to Egypt. Zipporah, that's my wife, somehow instinctively knew what to do. We Israelites have this rite of passage. It's called circumcision for male babies. It means that we're a part of the covenant promise of God, a part of his people. This could be done at 8 days old, but it could be done just before marriage. So you would be called a bridegroom of blood. Well, as I was laid dying, Zipporah circumcised my eldest son Gershom and touched me with his blood in the secret place, my secret place. It was somehow like a transfer. I'd been full of fear and doubt. I'd been stubborn, like someone whose heart was uncircumcised. And now my wife acted on my behalf and amazingly brought us into the covenant promise of God. More than that, I was healed. Blood was shed to make me whole, to break my uncircumcised heart and set me free from myself so that I could set others free. We headed for Egypt. My brother Aaron came out to meet us. He'd been directed by God. We met our Hebrew elders and showed them the signs, the rod and the snake and the staff and the leprosy and the not leprosy, and then the Nile turned to blood. And they believed that God had sent me. And when they saw that I am cared about their misery, they bowed and they worshipped. One day, a few thousand years later, I would stand on another mountain. Yes, I did say a few thousand years. I would stand with the prophet Elijah in our resurrected form, and together we would speak with our Lord Jesus as he was clothed in all his bright beauty and majestic glory. We spoke with him about a new promise, a new covenant, about blood being shed on a cross to set people free. People who were bound by a different kind of slavery, bound by sin, bound by the slavery of wrong and the slavery of brokenness, and that they would be set free by Jesus taking all that wrong in his own death in Jerusalem on a cross. His blood shed so they could be clean, healed, restored, forgiven, and above all, so they could know this great I am. That anyone with a hard heart could have it melted if they're willing. Anyone with a broken heart could have it healed. Anyone bound by their own brokenness and chains of wrong and regret could be set free. Anyone wandering in their own wilderness with a purposeless soul, as I had for 40 years, could be given dignity and purpose by our great I am as they serve him. Don't say no to him. Don't say no to our God. Don't refuse his will. Let his new promise, his new covenant, his shed blood save you, clean you, heal you, set you free. Let him melt your heart to his purposes. Don't say no. Whatever you do, don't say no. God bless you. Thank you for listening.